Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Kristen Dorr. I'm the Integro webinar moderator. If you're new to Integro or a webinar series, hello and welcome. We do monthly webinars. We like to keep them to 30 minutes, so it's a quick and valuable use of your time. If you're one of our ride or dies and you're here every month, we really appreciate it. We see you guys. Thanks for hanging out with us and spending a Thursday afternoon with Integro. On the phone with me today, we actually have three presenters. Scott Burt, who's the CEO here at Integro, as well as Frank Bruno from Preservica and Patrick Cardiello from Active Navigation. Scott will introduce them in a minute, but I want to remind you guys that you can ask questions in the question box at any time during the presentation, and one of our three presenters will answer those at the end. So without any further ado, Scott, I'll let you take it away.
Hey, thank you, Kristen, and I want to thank Patrick and Frank for helping us out as well. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on my camera here just for a bit here as well, so I can say hi to you in person. I see some friends and customers out there in North Carolina and across the country, and so hi and welcome and glad you've joined us. And you know, it's pretty interesting, this world of content. So many people, companies don't think about it, or it's an afterthought, but more and more with the regulations, the GDPR, with the California regs, the new ones that just got enacted in June 30th, the new cyber regs in New York, and the litigation, there's just so many forces coming at play here that old mentality of just keep everything forever is not a good option anymore. And the importance of having what you're supposed to have in a format that you can read it, and getting rid of the stuff that you don't need to keep around, and it's just so important. So we're excited today to introduce you to a couple of our new partners that we're very excited about. We've been working with them for a long time and friends with these folks in the industry, and we're excited to have formal partnerships and going deep to help clients with these products to solve the challenges that you face, sometimes whether you realize it or not, and using these tools. So your host here, so there's myself there on the left, and there's Patrick Cardiello with Active Navigation and Frank Bruno with Preservica, and we're going to have them speak here and introduce their companies and their products in that order. And let me frame it a little bit if I could. So again, all companies have content. You have millions of emails, millions of documents, Word documents, PDFs, CAD drawings, design, everything else, product, intellectual property, pharmaceutical drug trials, you name it. You've got important information that must be kept, and then you've also got jokes going around in email that would be embarrassing if they were published in the Wall Street Journal, like they sometimes are. And it is important that all of us know what we have in our companies, and we have policies and procedures and systems for managing your information relative to its value. And what we find ourselves with is today companies have huge amounts of content. I mean, we talk to companies with hundreds of terabytes, tens of petabytes, and they're saying, we've kept everything forever. We've never deleted anything. Oh my goodness, we have to clean up all that old content, plus we have to plan for the future so that we don't just keep filling the swamp with a mess. And so the kinds of solutions that we provide, and really a framework here for content services and governance that you see here on the screen, are things that every company needs to do. You need to know what you have. You can't manage it if you don't know what you have. So content analysis, search across and be able to identify, assess the value, cluster so that you can manage like things with like things, data map your content, and then clean up your content. There's a lot of reasons. The big driver, sensitive data risk. Again, where people didn't think much about, gee, so what if we have our passwords unencrypted on our file shares? So what if we have our CEO's social security number and credit card number and all of his personal information and millions of our customers unencrypted on file shares, in email, etc.? So what, right? We have firewalls for that. Well, we all know firewalls aren't going to work. And so and sensitive data risk and cleanup, the best way to secure that data, get rid of it, or secure it, and that important stuff, lock it down and preserve it appropriately, as we're going to be hearing about with Preservica in a bit. Platform modernization. Everybody's moving to the cloud, and for good reason. It is cheaper, it's better, it's faster. It's got so many benefits. So we're helping clients modernize your content platform from the legacy on-prem, harder to integrate with and support and keep updated, to cloud-based solutions with a lot of governance and capabilities built in. But when you're moving to the cloud, you don't just lift up all your crap and move it over. We want to clean it up on the way there. So that content analysis and cleanup is important. Content enrichment. So here's what we're talking about: artificial intelligence, machine learning, automatically classifying your content so that your end users are not overly burdened with classifying the content, but then you're able to keep and maintain and secure the important information in your world using automation. We love that. And then process automation. Historically, you get your faxes coming in, your invoices via attachments and email, still have paper coming in, any number of things. There are so many ways to automate and improve people's processes, companies' processes, that we can take companies with dozens of people doing particular tasks down to a very few people only working on a very small percentage of the exceptions. And nowadays with cloud-based solutions, we're using microservices and able to integrate these solutions, making companies far more efficient in leveraging these smaller apps that just do very specialized capabilities around AI, machine learning, adding value, automatically adding metadata, things like that, in ways that we couldn't do before. And the other thing that's really cool about it is integrating with our trading partners and our customers so much more efficiently to wring costs out and make yourselves faster and better to do business with. So our partners that we're presenting here today, Active Navigation is going first, really addresses that content analysis, content cleanup, modernization, all around that wheel there to be able to help assess and understand and be able to then take action on your data. And then we have Preservica, which is really an interesting company. There's nobody else like them out there. And you have content in your company, and I know some of the companies in your industries that you're in here, you have content, files, etc., digital content that needs to be kept around for longer than 10 or 15 years, and you need to know about Preservica. So I'm really excited to also introduce you to Preservica with Frank today. So I'm going to pass it on here, I think. And Patrick, can you speak here? And I'm going to give you mouse control, and why don't you proceed forward? And thanks very much. I'm going to turn off my camera.
Sure, sounds great. Thanks, Scott, for that mini introduction. I just turned on my cam as well. Can you see me, hopefully? So as you were just describing, file analysis is kind of a key function, especially now with regard to not only regulatory compliance, but really about getting knowledge into what you have, right? So let me see here. Just trying to, oh, there we go. Of course, perfect. Yeah, so Active Navigation as a company has actually been around for just over 10 years. And it's funny, when the company first came up about 10 years ago, the market was a lot less mature than it is now. I've been with Active Navigation for just over 3 years, and in that time period, it's fascinating how the conversation has changed. Active Navigation's File Analysis Product Discovery Center is specifically designed to analyze unstructured content, discover what exists, essentially audit it, right? Show a user, such as typically a records professional, a records manager, what exists within their environment. Now that might mean by file type, file age, file owner, file extension, whatever those fields are. And the idea is that the person who owns the policy, the person within a business who understands retention policy, can use those reports in parallel with that policy to make accurate and defensible business decisions. Too often do we see people come to us at a trade show, people call us, say that they know they have a lot of information, They know that a lot of it is garbage, rot, redundant, obsolete, and trivial data. And they know that a lot of it can be deleted with ease. But to be able to do it defensively, meaning prove to management, upper management, that it is, in fact, in terms from a policy perspective, defensible, can often be difficult if you can't analyze on an enterprise level across different systems. And that's exactly what Discovery Center was invented and intended to do. Now, that being said, you know, the use cases have certainly changed, or at least have been prioritized differently over the past, let's say, 3 years even. Let me see, I'm trying to click next here. There we go. And you can see here kind of the main four. I mean, if you were to apply any file analysis product, ours included, onto a data set, you could do that for a bunch of different use cases, mergers and acquisitions, right? If you're acquiring a new company and you're acquiring their data set, obviously you're going to have to audit that information in order to prioritize it, in order to govern it ongoing. So that's a sort of a mini use case that we don't run into that often. But the big four you see here, and I think this would be the same with any of our competitors. Really, you know, the first one, and this plays into sort of that wheel that you were showing before, Scott. The first one is your most obvious one, right? That's your discover and cleanse use case. That's where, for a variety of different reasons, people want to audit their information estate, and they want to essentially clean it of rot, sometimes deduplicate, and certainly they want to find sensitive information. Now, I want to take a second to talk about that. 3 years ago, storage reduction, just the hard cost of storage, was probably the biggest use case that we had for people coming to us. They wanted to reduce how much data they had because they didn't want to pay for all of that data within their environment. With the cloud, it's a little bit different. That certainly still lurks out there, but now the big thing is about increasing business efficiency, perhaps having a proactive type of approach to e-discovery, right? Reducing the amount of data that you have and that you manage so that you can effectively reduce costs of e-discovery down the road. But really the big use case now, the big drive for file analysis we see is finding sensitive data. Now that's for a multitude of, I think, obvious reasons. The big one, certainly regulatory compliance. You have GDPR in Europe, you have the New York cyber regulations over here, and various other states, Canada, various other countries passing their own versions, essentially saying that not only are companies liable, but CIOs are personally liable for the managing and the protection of their client and their employee private data. And so you can't do that. You can't say that you are certainly complying with the regulation until you've audited your data and you've found everything in an enterprise. And that's what file analysis is used for, I think, predominantly today. It's to find those needles in haystacks, right? And to make sure that you can move those, that you can mark them up, tag it, saying that they are sensitive, and then move them to new locations where they aren't subject to potential data breach and risky situations as such. You know, and so once you've found sensitive information, in terms of sort of a process, what do? Well, you certainly move it to a quarantine location and you clean out all of the garbage, which oftentimes we see just in terms of statistical average from the various markets that we work with and the various departments within organizations. You can typically reduce your data volume by at least 40% just by analyzing and cleaning out the rot as defined by any typical retention schedule. So once you've done that, you know, really the question becomes, well, what do you do with the information that remains? That has business value and that is subject to retention? You govern it. And by that we mean you can consistently reapply indexes on that data set, reanalyze that information, maybe on a monthly basis, maybe a quarterly basis. It really depends on the business. But it's about, so to speak, that you wouldn't clean out your garage and then leave it alone and then 6 months later go back and have to clean it out again, right? This is about consistently governing your data, having a sort of proactive approach so that you can not only defensively say it's clean, we are not going to be breached, we're not going to lose valuable sensitive information, but it's also so that it doesn't get chaotic again. You don't have to circle back and clean out your entire information environment maybe 6 months or 2 years or 5 years down the road. And so, you know, why file analysis? And I'd like to mention this too because the market is still an emerging market, I think. I think it's still very much a niche market. And you have a lot of different product lines, a lot of different kinds of companies out there. You have data loss prevention companies, you have data access management companies. A lot of organizations, especially when it comes to sort of the cybersecurity angle, seem to have a mentality that the cleanup piece, they can do some kind of manual effort to clean up their data, crawl it essentially manually. And then on the other side, security, well, they can perhaps have a firewall, they can have a data loss prevention tool, they can have a data access management tool. So they can make sure to watch not only who accesses files individually, but where files are moved, when they leave an environment, and they can potentially, secure information that way. But what we say is, well, that's fine, but what about when the data's at rest, right? What about it? So Gartner has actually done a lot of really cool papers on this, talking about when data's at rest. That's when an organization is most at risk. And so file analysis focuses on data discovery when it's at rest, right? In that area between the acquisition of, let's say, a firewall and a data loss prevention tool. And so that's so if you were to install Discovery Center, let's say, the process would be that you install it in your environment. The users, which would be usually subject matter experts like a records manager, are trained in the usability of the software, and then they start analyzing stuff. Let's say it's usually something like a file share first, something simple. They audit it, then they show management what they found. How many files are older than this date? How many files were created by this guy? How many files contain social security numbers? And from that initial view, you can then start to clean, right? You can find the rot, you can deduplicate across systems, and you can find that sensitive information. And then you start to model. And this is really where the real work comes in, and this is where the business really starts to get a feel for what they should and shouldn't keep. This is where you're starting to model rules based on what you found. So we're not putting the cart before the horse here. We're actually defining rules based on your environment. And the idea is that from there you can actually clean it, and then from there you can tag the information that remains to correspond with new systems and to make sure that it's classified ongoing. And then finally, you have that capability to potentially move information from one repository to another. So I guess, to wrap up, what's a real world use case? What's a real world case study of Discovery Center, of a file analysis platform being used in a proactive sense to clean data? Well, Pandora Media has been a client of ours for actually just about 3 years now. And when they first came to us at a trade show, actually it was at ARMA, I believe, they came to us saying that they had a lot of information. It turned out to be just about 25 terabytes that were within scope of this project. Certainly they have other data sets, but this was what was in scope of their cleaning efforts. And they wanted to audit it. They wanted to look at file shares, and I believe it was Exchange. And they wanted to see what existed. And what we ended up doing, just from a high-level perspective, right, we did that process where we audited their data, told them what existed in a series of different, workbench sessions. And then we were able to clean data, and we actually determined that 60%, you'll see here, 60% of their information that we analyzed was garbage. It could be deleted. Now, Pandora was also fun because, of course, you would expect there were unique file types, a lot of video files that actually had business value, unlike a lot of other clients. But, that's what it's about. It's about not only being able to decrease your garbage, but to increase your business efficiency so that you can more effectively find information when you need it, save costs in doing so, and defensively say that you know where your sensitive information is and that you're not at risk of breach. So with that, Scott, I think that's it. I think I came just under 10 minutes there. So
excellent. Thank you, and appreciate that. Now, so file analysis, very important. Next up is going to be Frank Bruno introducing us with Preservica and why Preservica fills such an important value and gap and function in managing our content. Frank, you there?
I am. Thanks for having me. Not sure how to get control.
I can get you going here at first.
Great.
I moved it forward for you one there.
Great. Well, good afternoon, and thanks for allowing us to join you guys today. As Scott mentioned, I'm Frank. I run sales for Preservica, and I want to spend about 10 minutes covering a few slides that speak to the world of active digital preservation. And we say active because digital preservation without access is pointless. And to complement what Patrick just delivered to you guys is after you have done that part of the project, right, which is the identification, appraisal, and then you figuring out what to do with what's left over. That's where Preservica comes into play. And what we'd like to do is to basically get you to know us a little bit better. It would be better to educate you on the idea of long-term retention and risks you would consider, and the various use cases, of course, that ultimately feed into your general requirements for a long-term digital repository. So Scott, if you would mind advancing the slide. The world's cultural, economic, social, and political memory is at risk. Our mission is to protect it. And so what started as a research project with the UK National Archives about 18 years ago now has become one of the leading digital preservation software companies, offering up hosted solutions that will integrate with other enterprise content management systems, other digital asset management systems, other repositories, and mission critical business solutions like SharePoint and Outlook. So the ability to automate the archival solution and to have it remain active is really the way you want to go about this for a number of reasons. And having created some standards that you'll find in Preservica products, you'll know that there's a couple of ISO standards. The first one is ISO 14721. Nobody needs to write this down, but that references an open archival information ecosystem, if you will. And open means so you can take in information easily in an automated process and apply artificial intelligence. We're not there yet, but we're evolving to that point. The second ISO certification is 16363, which sets the criteria for trusted digital repositories. And Preservica is basically a trusted digital repository combined with a workflow engine that performs data services to keep a watchful eye on your files, and it will facilitate automated migration pathways. So when a file format's at risk of being obsolete, so you get that evil, you try to open up the file and it won't open, you'll get that message. Preservica will automatically migrate the file to a usable format so that the file will always open. And part of the mission in protecting the world's memory is also about providing a means to accomplish the end. So it's the last repository that files, having been discovered, appraised, and curated with metadata, is ingested into Preservica as an archival information packet, which is complete with the original file for provenance purposes, and then all of the metadata, which we know help facilitate the search and access, and certainly access rules too. So if your company has long-term digital storage but not digital preservation, then you're not really addressing the real risk that exists. And as you change the slide, as file formats change, software is retired and the data that organizations might want to keep could be lost forever. This was a quote from Gartner. And that's true unless you have a trusted digital repository that allows you to manage, access, and discover files for centuries to come. Regardless of what happens to the file format over time, Preservica's digital preservation software will forever protect original files while serving up in the most current usable format. So you never have that dreaded file won't open situation, or worse, not being able to find the file at all. Provenance and authenticity come to mind when Preservica, when a file is ingested into Preservica, and we call these original files preservation copies, and they contain the original bytes that are periodically monitored for fixity, and fixity, the checksums, those values tell us whether or not the file is a real thing. And when files are ingested into Preservica, it's manifested in 3 copies so that any anomalies that are found in one of the 3 copies can be fixed by the other 2. That's a self-healing durable storage feature that's provided in Preservica, and it's a means for having ultimate in control as it relates to security profiles, because you assign to users, allowing them to see only what they're authorized to see in their profile, and then you're also double downing by tagging the files with certain metadata to facilitate file management, search, and access. So you use the metadata to do things like setting retention schedules, setting legal hold, creating virtual collections, things like that. And if you have large collections, terabytes, millions of objects, you would also have the ability to do bulk metadata editing, which is very, very important, especially if you need to protect certain things, or if you're encountering a new regulation like GDPR, right? The right to be forgotten requires the responsibility to be found. So, you know, note to self that that metadata capability is incredibly important when it comes to being able to search for things that you need to be mindful of from a regulatory perspective. So on this slide here, in a 100-year study conducted by the Storage Network Industry Association, long-term was defined as anything beyond 10 to 15 years, because really that's the time frame by which IT practitioners begin to lose control of logical and physical migration. And practitioners are struggling to keep pace with the onslaught of disparate databases. You know, when polled, over 80% of organizations reported to a need to retain information for over 50 years, and 68% reported a need to hold these things for over 100. So very telling. And you could just advance the slide, Scott, if you would. So here's some critical drivers for retention beyond 10 years. I mean, the example is like in the upper left-hand corner here, analysis reports and economic trend data needs to be maintained for 10 years, but there's no telling how often a file gets called upon, and if it requires permanent retention, like an as-built drawing and building specification on the lower right, you know, that file is going to require digital preservation, but it can't be locked in dark archive. It has to be active. You have to be able to find it and access it. So if Scott, you don't mind just advancing to the next slide. This pinwheel here is often referred to by our customers because as they help their company to mitigate risk and realize value, obviously preservation and access of long-term digital information is going to help support good corporate decision-making. It helps to drive innovation and greater efficiencies, right? Learning from the mistakes of our past or looking back at some of the things that did work in our past, you can continue to make decisions going forward. On the flip side of things, by meeting compliance, regulatory, legal requirements, you can keep up with technology over time and confidently decouple from some obsolete technology by taking what you need to keep and putting it in Preservica. Think about for a second all of the folks that are still supporting Lotus Notes that are trying to get away from it. Some are paying some hefty licensing fees to maintain that data when it can be migrated into Preservica, still be discovered at any point in time, but then you don't need to continue to support that technology, especially if you've moved on to something like Gmail or Outlook. Scott, you could advance a slide. So the benefits of long-term digital preservation, obviously the self-healing storage, you got the durable storage. There's also the provenance and authenticity of trustworthy information. This goes right down to the byte level. And if it's ever discoverable in a court of law, this would certainly trump anything else that's out there. It's got the ability to receive in content from multi-sources, right? So, you know, it's not just SharePoint, it's not just Outlook. You can scrape work files off of the internet. If you want to track Twitter, if you want to track sentiment, you can take that and put that into Preservica. We provide easy migration from obsolete formats to new file formats. Currently, there's over 1,500 migratable formats out there, and we're up to about 663. And these are the most common file formats that get migrated, so we're kind of keeping track of what's hot and what's not out there. And then the system itself provides the ultimate in organizing your collections. You can literally create a virtual collection picture if you're responding to a subpoena for some files and you need to turn over some electronic files to opposing counsel for discovery. You can do that by forming a virtual collection of the things that you need to push out, and then you can push those out to the users for purposes of discovery, yet the files will never leave your servers, which is very, very secure. And you know, it does have security access profiles as well as the metadata tagging for files that help you protect what's most important. And then if you want to make public other things, you can do that all in the same repository. And that takes us to the end. These are some of our clients, but you can see we've got some very popular corporate business names. We're doing business in over 15 national and pan-national archives. We have 21 out of the 50 state archives currently, and a whole bunch of universities. Colleges and universities love us. They're going to love us even more as we make our software more accessible. So we're also complying with web content accessibility guidelines to make things easy for physically challenged people to navigate our software and to be able to use it and find things in the archive, because they should have access. It's the right thing to do. And that's it for me.
Yeah, Frank, this is awesome. And the libraries and schools and the others have adopted this, and I think the corporations have similar needs. So you've already had good penetration there, and I think you'll have a lot more, and we'll help you there. So again, as a summary there, everybody here, you need to, I've looked at the attendees. We've got insurance, finance, manufacturing, energy. We've got a lot of companies here on the call today. Thank you for joining us. You have long-term preservation needs to be able to open files and have them work many years into the future, and Preservica makes that easy and outsourced in a SaaS model. And active navigation can help you clean up that content at rest and reduce litigation risk and sensitive data risk. So thank you very much for joining us. We were a couple minutes past schedule, and we really appreciate it. If you have any questions as you exit, there is a survey. Please take a moment and answer your survey. Thank you very much.